Christian covenanting considered. A law is simply a command to be obeyed. An oath is an appeal to God as the witness that one is telling the truth. A vow is a promise one person makes. We often use these terms interchangeably. A covenant includes all of the above. It is an agreement between two or more people who vow to do something lawful and swear an oath that they are sincere. Think of marriage. It is legally regulated and sworn before God and men. The whole arrangement is a covenant between the couple, society, and God. The promise to be faithful to the marriage covenant is a vow and an oath. Covenants can be either civil or religious. Religious covenants are either personal or social. When a believer turns from sin to trust Jesus, he enters the gospel covenant as an individual. It is also good for whole societies to promise to take God as their God and to follow him. Even pagans, like the sailors of ancient Tarshish, knew that covenanting was a good and natural thing to do. The heathen philosopher Epictetus wrote that men should swear loyalty to God, since soldiers swear loyalty to the emperor. The Bible commands us to make vows and then keep them. The Bible also gives us examples of true believers who made covenants with God. Covenanting was never abolished, so it is a moral duty in this New Testament era. Faithless disloyalty or covenant breaking is a great evil. Bible prophecies refer to this present age, or perhaps the millennium, as an age of covenanting. Paul expected the Corinthian Christians to be generous, but he was surprised and pleased when they first gave themselves to God in some sort of covenant. God's relationship with his people is closer and stronger in the New Testament than it is in the Old. The church is still God's bride, but the prophets predicted that God would take whole lands as his covenanted people. Knowing God makes whole societies happy. Jesus isn't just a personal savior of individuals. Swearing a covenant adds moral duty to God's laws. For example, it's always wrong to be a traitor. But a soldier who deserts commits a double crime because he breaks his oath to defend the country. An unmarried fornicator certainly breaks the seventh commandment, but a married adulterer is guilty of both immorality and breaking his or her wedding vows. Public social covenants are forever binding on the children of all who swear them. A covenant only ends if the entity that swore it ceases to exist or its purpose is accomplished. For example, marriage ends with the death of the spouse. Jacob made a covenant with God at Bethel, but the prophet Hosea holds his descendants bound to it. The covenant with Israel at the time of Moses did not die with those who swore it. Joshua and the Israelites made a covenant with the Gibeonites. 4 or 5 centuries later, God punished David and Israel because Saul had broken it. God condemns his people for not keeping their ancestors' covenants. Federal representation is simply assumed throughout the Bible. When Joseph's brothers swore to carry his bones out of Egypt, did Joseph think that they would leave Egypt themselves? No. He assumed that their sons would keep the promise. It is a basic but misunderstood principle that parents have the right to bind their children to covenants. This is the principle behind biblical infant baptism. Children are a part of their parents' faith. This is also the principle behind international treaties, which don't become invalid if the current politicians die or lose office. God has decided to hold us responsible for the public obligations of our physical, ecclesiastical, and national parents. Thus, Levi paid tithes to Melchizedek because he was in the loins of Abraham. Understanding the seriousness of covenanting helps us remember to be loyal to God. It gives us a basis for coming to God and asking him to bless us. It helps unify the church in all ages by reminding us to walk in the pious footprints of our spiritual fathers. Public social covenanting is not an ordinary part of public worship, like prayer, psalm singing, reading, and preaching. Covenanting is a duty for special occasions. Christians might choose to covenant with God when they face serious backsliding, persecution, revival, or blessing. Covenanting was practiced by the European Reformers and English Puritans. The Lutherans, for example, swore the Smalcaldic League. We should pay special attention to the national covenants of our British forefathers. The National Covenant was sworn in 1581 by the Scottish King James VI, the General Assembly of the Scottish Church, and all sorts of citizens. It was renewed in 1590 and 1638. The National Covenant is a promise to God that Scotland will be a biblical Christian nation and reject popish errors. The Solemn League and Covenant was an agreement between Scotland, England, and Ireland to serve God in unity and to defend each other from anti-Reformation forces. It was sworn by the Scottish Church in 1643 and by the Parliament in 1644 and again in 1649. In 1650 and 1651, King Charles II vowed to keep it, but he broke it soon after. These covenants agree with the Bible, so we who have descended from the nations of Great Britain are obligated to keep them. Though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto. Galatians 3:15. This summary of section 11 of William L. Roberts' Reformed Presbyterian Catechism of 1853 has been read to you by Scott Rocca. Thank you.